Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. We are in isolation, but we are isolation together. I have Lou.
Hello, everyone.
And Karen.
Hello.
And today we are talking Confessions and Lamentations. Originally aired May 24th, 1995. It is the 18th episode of the second season of Babylon 5. And here is a preventive warning. Because of the nature of this episode, I am almost 100% sure we will go a little political. If that is not something you like hearing, and I totally get that, there is a lot of crap out there and you want to get your mind off of it, you may skip this one. And no harm, no foul. We still love you. I just wanted to give you guys a warning.
And it won't be the entire conversation.
Right.
Exactly.
And Jesse, this might be a good time to mention our bingo card.
Yes. Oh, perfect.
Our updated bingo card.
Yes. So we have, because our Gray 17, a fellow Babylon 5 podcast, did a bingo card, and that inspired Lou, Karen, and I all got together, and we have made a Last Best Hope bingo card. It's available on my Twitter stream. We will, if you want it, we can email it to you, but it is available out there. And if you want to follow along and play bingo, I thought it was great. And thank you to Charles for correcting that we wrote Lando
instead of Londo.
Though I think we should have saved it. And now then, I'm going to do everything I can to get a Lando reference anytime we talk about it.
Okay, good. Lando always does it. Did you post the updated version with Londo instead of Lando? I did fix it.
Yes, I am almost 100% I did, but just in case, I will tweet it right now.
Okay. Cool.
So.
Thanks to Canva for helping me create a pretty card.
Yes. All right. Why don't we start? We are talking about this is a episode written by JMS. The rest of the episodes on this season have been by Mr. Stavinsky, as is all of the third and fourth season. Going back to, and then the fifth, we get a break when some guy named Neil Gaiman writes an episode.
Who is that?
Yeah.
What has he done?
Karen, what's some quick thoughts on this episode?
Okay, I liked it. I think it's prescient. I mean, it's one of those episodes that, like, you would say some of the episodes, it's pretty common that it would be something that happens in the future too. This one, however, I mean, there hasn't been an epidemic like COVID in a very long time, since like the Spanish flu. So the fact that it had this episode, and it's almost an echo of what has been happening recently, I think that's really interesting. It's like they predicted it, And it's not like you could say to yourself 20 years ago, oh, yeah, there's going to be a huge pandemic. I mean, who knew? I didn't know. Did you guys know? I mean, yeah. So I thought it's interesting that it kind of predicted what's happening now. We do get some more Franklin in this episode. And again, it's part of the arc. There's little hints of the arc, I think, in this one. So yeah, a lot of things to like about it. And I hate to say light because it's a dark episode, but I enjoyed watching it. And I watched it 3 times. And I am getting super crusty about not knowing who Kosh is, even though he's not in this episode. Every week I'm reminded I don't know what's inside of Kosh's suit, and my husband is making fun of me for it. So that's just a me thing.
I love that. All right. Yeah, I'll tell you offline, right? I'm like, oh
no, don't tell me. I want to know, and I don't want to know.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like the observers from Fringe.
Yeah, you are not one who reads the last page of a book. You know. All right, Lou, how about you?
Good standalone episode. I believe I'm safe in saying that it's pretty well a standalone episode. There might be some specific character things that will carry on through other episodes, but in terms of the overall arc of the series, I think this one's a standalone episode. It's interesting, as Karen mentioned, that this episode has more of a resonance now than if we'd say done this B5 series review 2 or 3 years ago before COVID had struck.
Right, like when you originally talked about this was probably 2018, 2019. You said, "Hey, I got this for Christmas. We should talk Babylon 5," and then we just were all busy. And yes, I mean, God, think of I can remember watching this when it originally came out, and on a rewatch, never had the kind of that I did. I watched it 3 times as well, and going, oh my goodness. So please continue.
Yeah, so it's it's funny how history does repeat itself, and jumping to the very end of the episode when Franklin says some things never change. Unfortunately, it's very true, and it shows in this, how slowly we evolve as a species. And there's just so many things in here that echo what we just went through and still are going through in this episode. And that this is the type of episode that shows the strength of science fiction in that it's able to give you a different perspective on a common day problem that normally you wouldn't be able to get because you're too emotionally entangled in it. So I quite like it from that perspective. This episode also has echoes of Rod Serling's The Monsters Are Out on Maple Street, when people start turning on each other, and hysteria and irrationality rise to the top over logic and science and compassion. So it's really good from that perspective as well, and it shows it's a history lesson, or what do you call it? It's a warning tale that if you don't take the proper steps, you could destroy your entire culture, race, species, whatever. And also, this episode has echoes of the Star Trek original series episode, Let This Be Your Last Battlefield, which showed the ridiculousness of racial prejudice with the race where one side was white and the other side was black, and then the other character had the reversal. So it was this episode brought back a lot of memories of previous what do you call those kind of episodes where they're forecasting a cautionary tale.
Yeah. So
yeah, and I thought there was some really good performances from the regular cast as well. So yeah, it was interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, so let's get into it.
Can I do
please.
something real quick?
Yes.
I have a couple nits that I want to bring up right up the front. It has to do with Franklin. Okay, we've already marked off 3 things on the bingo card. Complain about Franklin, apology for political discussion, and Kosh questions, which I brought up, but I didn't think about it. So anyway,
Star Trek reference.
Did we? Oh yeah, Star Trek reference. I don't know
if we included that, but we talked about having that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to mention the bingo card again. I just thought it was funny.
Yeah.
So Franklin is doing an autopsy for the second time, and he's in there all alone. He's got his little mask on, and he thinks, this might be a pandemic. And so he takes his mask off to call, even though we know they can talk through the mask.
Mhm.
He's standing right there by the body that he has opened up that might have some sort of plague, and he takes his mask off.
Mhm.
Okay, so that really bothered me every time I watched it, because no doctor would do that, right? They would leave, or they would go outside the room at least to do whatever. Okay, and then later on in the episode, he gets mad and he he kicks over this like tray, this little like rolling cart, and it has all these samples on it. Why would he do that? Why would he? What? Okay, anyway.
No, so I have to share with you, there are certain constants in life, and one of the constants in my life is when we are watching a show like this, any kind of show, and someone loses their temper and makes a mess, Linda will say, now you got to clean it up.
Right.
Right? Like she's like, what? Why? That just makes no sense. You've made a mess and now you got to clean it up. Really?
Right.
You couldn't find something else to do?
That is one part. And the other part is he's destroying samples of this plague that they're trying to get to the bottom of. Why did you take all those samples if you're just gonna knock them on the floor? So anyway, and they have to do with Franklin, which is, a constant with us, definitely, to complain about, even though I liked him a little better in this episode. So, okay, I'm very sorry. I just want to get that out of the way right up front.
Well, while you're rolling. All right, so the Meerkats are
meerkats.
Meerkats.
The Markab.
The Markats, yes, the Meerkats. Yes, the Meerkabs have an illness, superstitious. Their belief is that only the unclean get this. So therefore, no one wants to embrace it. No one wants to, their government hid this, did not do research, did not try anything. It's now started. Even Dr. Franklin's friend, the doctor, doesn't want to tell them what's going on. And the truly is the burying your head in the sand. And this ends up just going horribly. So Karen, you're on a roll. Let's talk about that, kind of the storyline, and we'll get to where I think in a separate discussion we'll talk about Lennier and Delenn, their actions. But let's talk about this, the way this was hidden, the way they didn't embrace it.
Yeah, very Ronald Reagan type response, like he did to AIDS. He hid it. He never said AIDS until there were thousands and thousands of people dead. So, I mean, it's nothing new. And to hide it for religious reasons, and, kind of this, what do you call a stigma? This kind of stigma that people don't want. I understand why he hid it, because he did say it was an order. And when you get an order for something, you don't break it. And I think until he came out and said it was an order, he was torn. He wanted to tell everybody what the deal was, but he literally couldn't. And I think there's also a part of him that it was kind of he was inundated with this, it's the unclean that get it. And so there's probably a part of him that is hesitant to talk about it as well. So you can understand why he does it. It's dumb, because it does end up killing his entire species. And going on Babylon 5 with it, as they did, it also infected another species, the Pakmara. And, that could cause a huge problem for them as well. I felt really bad for that doctor. I can't remember his name, but anyway,
Lazarine.
Lazarine, thank you.
He,
I felt really bad for him.
And I thought the actor, especially during all the prosthetics, right, did a really good job of being human and then saying, okay, well, Stephen, you wanted to know, and now then he knew he was going to die.
Right.
And so he was giving every chance to get Stephen the information to try to help. And that's a very noble death. The actor is Jim Norton. He does have one of those faces that you go, oh, I think
a very esteemed actor.
Yeah.
Oh, he played the ombudsman in Grail.
Ombuds. Yeah, he's in a few episodes as different races, which I thought was cool.
Was Sir James Walter in Elementary? Played in Deception. A lot. Very, very long. IMDb page. So yeah, really nice. Anything else, Karen, or want to go to Lou?
Yeah, just one. I don't know. This is an overall thing, but I was really angry at the other staff of the med bay who wouldn't go in.
Yeah.
And I just thought, okay, that I get that too. I mean, that happens now as well. I mean, I don't like it, but I see where they do that in real life. So the whole thing was frustrating.
I'm really glad you brought that up, right? Because the idea, they could have very easily gone with, oh, they're amazing and they're all angels. We are, and I hate to use the word, but we're all mortal. Instead of saying human, I'll say we're all mortal. And so there are people that have, they're afraid, and they have this, like, why do we need to sacrifice ourselves? Lou, how about you?
Yeah, just expanding on that point that Karen made, like, I just thought, well, why don't you guys have hazmat suits or something? Like, why are you just walking in there with masks in the first place? But I understand what they're trying to do. They're just trying to ramp up the tension and the anxiety and highlight the foibles of everybody in this episode. But they put the medical staff as, they made them as victims when I don't really think they deserve that. But I guess that was the best way that JMS saw of that point being driven home. So can you just remind me what were we discussing in this part of the episode?
Just the everything up to Lennier and Delenn going in there. Just the whole kind of situation of the feelings of
Lazarine and his
and I mean that's a great point with like Lazarine that Karen was mentioning, that he was under orders, but I do think the bigger part was the stigma attached to it. It's because they all thought it was due like to immoral behavior and whatnot, and kind of like vengeance from God, if you will, sort of thing that we've seen in our societies, where the people say that certain behaviors are punishment, are punished because of from God, because of they're immoral. And this episode does a pretty good job of that. And as soon as I heard him, Lazarine, who in this episode is probably one of the more rational, professional Markabs, and he's still hobbled by these prejudices and whatnot. So I thought that was really well done, and definitely really well done in this episode. I thought that came across quite well, and it's just I thought the progression of the disease was really well done. The meetings that Sheridan had with his staff about how best to handle it was also well done as well. And the solution that they wanted to implement of isolating the Markabs was handed to them, because the Markabs themselves wanted to isolate themselves. So that was a bitter irony that how that played out. And I just thought that the tension of the plague was built up pretty well, especially when it jumped species, which added another notch to the thing and to the tension of the episode. And on the plus side, I love the fact that Garibaldi hesitated for a moment, but he did extend a hand and help that Markab who had been beaten up. So that was a nice beat in the episode as opposed to what happened with the medical staff. So yeah, there was generally, I thought the dynamics of the situation were handled quite well, and that obviously the parallels of what we've seen in our own history is it's all there, and it just shows that this behavior is well documented and known because he wrote this episode before COVID. So if he had have written this after COVID, people would say, well, he's just copying what happened during that time period for us. But he wrote it before, and yet everything that's in this episode is something that we all experienced to one degree or another, either directly or indirectly in our own lives with COVID. So, it really is amazing that, and it's a good object lesson that, these morality tales can really have value, because once you've gone through something like this, the relevance of this episode is so much stronger than before. And even before we would have seen this, I don't think our conversation would have be too much difference, but it's just the fact that when we're talking about it now, we have this emotional subtext to it that we are just recently experienced, and it really makes this episode stand out more for me than it would have before pre-COVID.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm struck by, and there are sometimes dialogue that sticks with you, and I can remember a Designing Women episode during the AIDS epidemic, and one of the characters said, well, what some people say, the only good thing about the disease is who they're killing. And I remember being shocked by that line and the way that many people felt.
Were they castigated for that on the show? I mean, was
Well,
that something that someone?
I mean, it was shown as that's a really bad statement. In other words,
Good.
that would, they timed this as,
I mean, literally, they called it the gay plague back then.
Yes, exactly. I do know that it has been told by people a lot smarter than me that if the administration had immediately said, we need to wear masks, we need to do everything, and treated this not as a political, that
COVID
could have been, a lot of people could have been saved. To this day, there are people that do not believe in giving out free condoms or free birth control or having sex education in schools for various reasons that are political, not anything to do with medical. I think your Garibaldi scene, I'm so glad you brought it up, because it was just a little beat, but it was enough to show that we're all human, yet we can continue to be merciful and to be.
And he didn't know yet that humans couldn't get the disease, which I think was super brave and commendable by him.
Yeah, and the idea that and I almost specifically, I know that Lou, as a rule, does not read Lurker's Guide, another bingo square, but I almost sent him to this one like, okay, this one you need to read, because all this discussion of JMS answering people's, when they posted it, I actually wrote down a couple of them, and I sent one of them to you, right? Is that we worry about, we politicize it instead of worrying about the disease. and the doing that. We do find out, like you said, the Pakmara can get it. They're worried about it. The other thing I think is important is when they go, Franklin, what do you want to do? It's your call. He says, I want to test everyone. Well, that gets everyone. If one person is contagious, by having everyone come, it could spread the disease.
Right.
So that may not have been the best decision, but they decide to self-isolate, which is horrible because it ends up, one person contaminated, but they are convinced that we are going to pray. And there are two different acknowledgments of the Jewish and Passover on this. We're going to talk about the meal shortly, but the idea the angel of death will pass over us on this thing. So let's go back to if there is lightness in this episode. Delenn and Lennier decide they're going to invite the captain over for dinner. And he's hungry and he's ready. And I thought this was a really nice change of pace of the episode. And the acting was brilliant, that Lennier is sitting there going, please don't screw this up. Because the premise is, right, it takes 2 whole days to prepare this meal because it's so important, which reminds me sometimes of God Love Her, My Lovely Bride, that will spend all this time getting ready when someone coming over. The house has to be clean. And Chris will always go, oh, yes, because they're going to open the kitchen cabinet and look inside and go, oh, that's dirty, versus just enjoying the time. So, Lou, let's start with you. The Mambari meal, and let's not forget to put a little piece of flan over for
it's flarn.
Valen.
Flan is really yummy.
Yeah, Valen. We have to set aside a piece for Valen.
Yeah, this was definitely a nice change of pace from the rest of the episode. And I think out of the 3 of them, I love Lennier's reactions to every step of the meal. He's just hoping that it wasn't going to be a misstep in that and he would have to do the meal over again. You could just tell by his reactions, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to do this again. So I quite enjoyed that. And I kind of surprised that I guess because of the ritual, he has to be there because they have to donate part of their meal to the person that prepared the meal. Because the subtext of this meal to me was sort of like a romantic dinner for Delenn and Sheridan. So, and whatever feelings they have for each other haven't been fully expressed or realized or revealed to us yet, but there's definitely an attraction between the 2 of them. And there's a bond that we're seeing here that we didn't see between her and Sinclair. That's not on the bingo card yet. So there we go. We're still playing, folks. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for me, because we've seen the Babylon 4 time episode where we know that she's with Sinclair. And I'm still not sure how they're going to reconcile her relationship with Sheridan versus Sinclair, and maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but that was the main thought that I actually carried away from that meal, besides Lennier's performance, which I thought Bill Mumy did a great job with. Yeah,
and not just the meal. I think they also did a great job with the reaction after they came out of the room.
Yeah.
His reaction was great, and then Delenn's also. And I'm getting some serious Bow Chicka Wow Wow vibes there between Delenn and Sheridan. Definitely, especially after she came out of the room after tending to the sick, when she cried in his arms, and I mean, come on. This is more chemistry than we've seen with any other pair yet on B5. I think that's a good thing that it happens so late in the show. A lot of times the characters are immediately, like you've said, they have to put them together. I think in this case, it's almost a natural thing. We saw them come together for that meal when he first came on the ship. And we know he's working with them, with Delenn and Kosh, to learn how to fight in the war. So he definitely has some kind of rapport with her. And the fact that it's turning into something more, I think, is a natural progression. And it's not just we're going to stick them together for the sake of sticking two people together. And I think the way they play it as well, I mean, Mira Furlan and Bruce Boxleitner are really great I think they have chemistry together, because the looks he gave her were really nuanced and natural, and the way she reacted to him also, I believed 100%, and I really dug that. And the meal made me giggle a little bit because, and I have some questions also. Number one, when they go to meditate and they're closing their eyes and Bruce makes a face, Sheridan, is he saying that he doesn't want to meditate or that he doesn't like the food? Number one. Number two, I want to know what Lennier and Delenn said when he left, something about the Flarn. I'd like to know what were they talking about the fact that Sheridan was stupid and didn't know what the Flarn was, or were they talking about the Flarn was undercooked, or what? So I have those two questions for you. And otherwise, the meal was awesome.
Yeah, I love the fact that Delenn says, we must do this again. And Phil Mummy's like, of
no,
course we should.
And
yeah.
Sheridan went, sure.
Yeah. Right. Like,
yeah. I don't think Sheridan, I just think he didn't, I think he just wanted to eat. He wasn't, opposed to meditating, but it's like, we're eating now. You don't meditate in the middle of a meal. So that was what my thought was.
I agree with that. And I also think, right, that he's, it's all, and it's all the rituals, right? Like, okay, we wait and we eat with our right hand. And,
you could see him getting exasperated.
Yeah, it was their version of Fizbin.
Yes.
If anybody gets that reference.
Yeah, there you go.
And it was wonderful to see them kind of go for that. And I love the frustration. And then, of course, if you've been up a long time and you quiet, right, like you could fall asleep. And then, and then, of course, I don't snore. I don't, right?
He denies that he's sleeping. Yeah. And then when they say, what is the noise you make? I don't snore. So he's admitting that he was sleeping in that next breath, which was funny.
So that was very, very funny. All right.
Okay, so you have answers for me?
I do not have answers.
He was okay with the meal. Yes, it's just the meditation.
Okay, the meditation, because he was,
Okay.
And then, according to JMS, it doesn't matter what they were saying. He
said, it does. It matters to me.
Fill it in yourself. Whatever you want them to be, that's what you could say it was.
Well, I want to know whether it was undercooked.
Yes.
Or whether they were making fun of Sheridan.
If it doesn't matter, then why include it?
Because it's just a fun little beat of them talking. So
I want to know.
Yes. I will look up what he says about that. Going to more serious, one of the most quoted phrases among Babylon 5 fandom is faith matters. Faith, that isn't Face Matters. Now I'm going to do, what they keep saying, right? And damn it, why did I get that wrong? Edit this out. No, I'm kidding. But they decide to go comfort. And you see, John is very upset. Like, no. You could die. And Faith manages. That's it. And she's like, this is what I've got to do. And of course, Lennier being Lennier, he follows her. So let's talk about their time with finding the young girl, seeing her mother. What is your mother's name? Mama. And then Lennier like, okay, that didn't give me much. Faith manages, and them being there. I did love that John, you know, he says to Lynn, Sheridan says, when you do see me again, call me John. So, and I do love the line where it says, don't look away, Captain. All life is transitory, a dream. We all come together in the same place at the end of time. If I not see you again here, I will see you in a little while in a place where no shadows fall, which is beautiful because the shadows, the double meaning with this. So Lou, let's talk to you first. The Delenn and Lennier going there to be angels of mercy.
It was a wonderful act on their part, but I'm not really sure what the stated motivation that they gave was. It just wasn't something that I'd seen in the Minbari before, so it just seemed a little out of left field for me. But I just took it as, within the context of this episode, they wanted to show some characters having mercy and empathy, as opposed to most of the reactions to the other characters. So that was probably the hand wave moment for me in the episode. But I thought Delenn and Lennier carried it out quite well, and the acting for their sacrifice was quite well done by both actors. It just seemed a little out of left field for me, but within the context of the episode, I understand why it was there. So it was good to see. And as Karen mentioned earlier, their reactions when they come out of the section where all the Markabs have passed away was really well done as well. So I have mixed feelings on it. I liked it. I just found it a little contrived, I guess I could say.
I think that's a fair get. I did love she is broken up, incredibly unhappy, and in another episode, in another series that I think isn't as high stake, Franklin's there to save the day. He has he's gotten the vaccine and it's too late. And Lennier's shaking his head like, no, there's no one left. By the way, before we get to Karen, someone asked Delenn and Lennier's exchange after Sheridan leaves. And JMS's comment was, isn't it more fun to leave the piece untranslated? Shouldn't some things be left to the imagination?
No, it's not more fun.
All right, we need to send him a tweet saying, no, I want to know. That's one of the questions if he ever's on the podcast, and we will ask that.
That's a cop-out.
All right, there you go. Karen, your time.
Yeah, I was a little wrecked the first time I saw that, when Franklin is he's hyped up, I'm going to save these people, yay. And when they open the door and he realizes they're all dead, he can't help them. And Lennier is very zen about it, but you could tell he's sad. But Delenn cannot keep it together. She is totally obliterated by this. And I mean, put yourself in their place, they just watched a whole room full of Markabs die, and they couldn't do anything to save them. I'm assuming they couldn't comfort all of them because the death is so quick. And I honestly think that she almost kind of hates herself. I mean, I hate to say that, but like, I couldn't do anything for them. I couldn't comfort them. I couldn't, so she feels defeated. And all of those emotions, again, the acting in this episode was amazing. The look on her face when she comes out it just tells 1,000 things about what happened in that room. And I was really it affected me a little bit because, again, we're living through this COVID time, and there are doctors and nurses that have just full of people that are infected with COVID that they can't help them. And we've seen, I don't know if everyone's seen them, but the bodies from all these people that have died from COVID, just like a truck full of them. And how anguished it makes people that are in the healthcare industry. So you really equate it to things that at least when I watch things, I equate it to something I know, and that it really hit a place inside of me that hurt. So yeah, that scene and the subsequent ones where she talks to John, and I just, it's just it made me, what do you call it? Not sentimental, but, just very sad.
Verklempt.
Yes.
Thank you. Verklempt works.
Yeah. We also get a story of Delenn talking about being lost as a little girl and a figure there helping her and supporting her. We don't necessarily get a payoff on that. But it does wonder who was that and what's going on. Is that significant? And is that why she feels calling to what she's doing? And that's not an answer we get right away, but it is a good question.
Again, that's another connection that she feels with them. And when she comes out and she's seen children, that child that they helped, he died as well. So, I mean...
Yeah. The other thing I think to notice is Franklin is continuing to use a lot of stems and is justifying it because there's nothing else to do. I would argue to Stephen, if I was his friend, that yes, there are appropriate times to use it, and then there are other times if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority, and you have to space yourself and you have to pace yourself. And I don't think it's spoilers to say there is a chance this won't end well. What do you two think?
Definitely. And I think he's a person that has no idea how to delegate. There's a whole room full. We saw all of them.
Yes.
In this case, with this epidemic, I could see him wanting to stay up. But there have been other times that he's using stims and he really could have delegated to the rest of his staff. So I think he's taking a lot on himself. And for some reason, he's feeling compelled to do this instead of delegating. So I think that might come to a head. Why isn't he using the rest of his staff? Is he overextending himself? So, yeah, I mean, the reason, it's one of those things that, you mention it, so it's going to come back later. And they've mentioned it twice now and implied several times that he's overextending himself. So, yeah, I think it's going to come back.
Any thought, Luke?
Yeah, I agree with Karen, and it's definitely going to come back. I can see from his perspective his rationale for why he's doing it. I'm curious as to why within the medical section he seems to be an isolated character. Like in other doctor shows, there's usually like a co-worker or a nurse or something like that they're usually paired with, or that they're exchanging dialogue when they're analyzing diseases and whatnot, and that's not present in this show. So I think that he seems pretty isolated, and if that's the direction they decided to go with for his character, that's one thing. But I think it would have helped if he had like a nurse or an aide that was with him at all the time, or anytime he was in the med section doing doing his job, but that we don't see that, and which I find really curious now that I think about it. Just kind of struck me as we're talking about it. But it's it's going to lead up to I think a big problem, because given the nature of his job, there's just going to be, crisis after crisis. And if we're going into a war that we've been led to believe, then there's going to be a lot more casualties and, collateral damage victims that he's going to have to treat. And how long can you sustain the workload that he's doing on his own without, falling victim to the stimulants and that he's taking? So I don't know how that's going to play out, but it could be a pretty hard crash for him, and it will be interesting to see how that plays out. I was all on a little bit of a tangent. I was almost expecting him at the end, when that bartender was making that terrible joke about the Markabs, that he was going to reach over the bar and punch him out, but he surprisingly just walked away. So that was interesting.
He's a man of science, and a lot of men of science, I've noticed, are not into fighting. They're kind of nerdy.
I did like that that he did not lose his temper. I was very happy of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. Yeah, and one of the things I do like about this show is because, sometimes, especially in Star Trek, you'll see there's McCoy and a nurse, and and like, really, there's only one other doctor? Or in Next Generation, there's Crusher, and
and no one.
Yeah, and so I like the idea that there are other doctors, that, but you do think that he's just being unwise. All right.
And they're always walking around in the background.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I don't think we've ever seen that med lab empty.
No.
And you have to also assume that they're still getting people from, the Narn on the ship.
Yeah.
Has that stopped during the epidemic? No, they're still coming on board. So he is really overloaded big time.
Yeah. The only other thing I want to bring up is Kiefer is
Kefler.
Kefler. Yeah, Kiefer, mispronounced the word. Is out there. Warren is on his own time taking out his ship.
Is that his first name, Warren?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Out looking for something. He saw something, and he's doing this. He's doing it at his own time. Now, I would make the argument, yeah, but you're using whatever resources, but it almost sounds, they said recharged, so I don't know if it was an early all-electric vehicle, so it just had to plug in the battery. Like, is this a Tesla, a spaceship? And the captain is going to have none of that. When he's told that, he says, "You stop this." And Susan tells him it makes for a very fun discussion when he says, "But there's something out there," Kiefer says, and she's like, "Yes, there is. There's something out there. There's also something in here. That something is me giving you a direct order."
I loved that.
Yes.
Yep, that was a nice beat.
I sometimes I'm going to share a little too much of myself. I have managed teams for 30 years, and every once in a while, I just would like to say, do it because, damn it, I told you to. Right?
Yep.
And dismissed.
Yeah.
This, I said, but you just can't do that.
No.
And I really don't want to. It's just every once in a while. So
I do.
Yeah.
I manage people, and sometimes I do want to.
So this is another nitpick for me.
Please.
Keffer's out there in normal space trying to find something when he saw the thing in hyperspace when he was stuck between jump gates. So, like, what does he think he's going to find in normal space? That if he wants to do this, he has to keep taking the jump gate and getting himself lost. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me why he's expecting to find something in normal space. But
I got
that's
the idea.
just me.
I got the idea he's looking in hyperspace, but I don't know if that's true.
But normally you don't Well, I guess they do travel between gates, so okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he's
so he
jumping
would
back and
have-
forth between gates,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I think
exactly.
he's moving too fast to find anything. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
But
Any other thoughts on that?
Yes.
Please.
Sheridan is suspicious of what's out there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we get that Sheridan has an inkling, and that's why he doesn't want Kefler out there, because he thinks it might be, I'm guessing, a shadow ship.
Yes.
Because he's learning all that from Kosh and Delenn. And I think that's the major hint for the arc that we're getting. And it was just a throwaway comment. And that's what excites me, is that I'm like 99% sure that that's him guessing it's some kind of ship.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that there's these little foreshadowing moments in there. And even though I don't know what's going to happen, I have not seen it. I have not gotten, and you guys know that I am forcing myself not to look for things that are coming up. So yeah, I love that it's something that I can see, but I feel like it's something that can easily be overlooked. So Sheridan's reaction really was the big takeaway for me. And my other takeaway is that we're finally getting some of Kefler that will justify him being in the opening credits. So, I mean, thank goodness for that, right?
Yeah.
And is he looking for a thing, or is he looking for a ship? Does he have suspicion that I'm talking about Kefler. I think Sheridan is pretty sure it's a ship.
Yeah.
I don't know what Kefler's seeing. He's seeing some kind of anomaly or whatever. So we know that it's something that can't be detected very easily. It can't be identified, but Sheridan has this kind of thought as to what it is. So I'm thinking it's one of the shadow ships, kind of keeping an eye on Babylon 5. Again, it's just me. You can tell me I'm an idiot later, but that's what I think. And I think that was the major hint to the arc in this episode.
So I'm so sorry if I misunderstood you, Carrie. Are you saying that Sheridan is the one that's telling Keffer to do this?
No.
Okay.
I am telling you that he doesn't want Kefler to look into it because he suspects it's a shadow ship.
But Sheridan hasn't said anything to Keffer.
But
he told Ivanova to tell Kefler to stop it.
Oh, okay. I didn't watch the episode as many times as you did. So.
Oh, Ivanova comes to him and says, Kefler's looking into this on his own time. He's out there right now. I guess I got to pull him in. And she says that Kefler is looking for some unknown thing in hyperspace.
Okay.
So he says, tell Kefler to come in and that he can't do stuff on his own time. He definitely does not. And he gives kind of a look like, what should I tell her that she won't suspect that I know what's going on?
Oh, okay.
At least I'm kind of reading into the looks and everything.
Okay, that's a good catch. I missed that totally.
So what do you think, Jesse?
In the terms of warm and cold, I think you're very warm.
Oh, awesome. So I'm not going to be called an idiot later. That's awesome.
No. Yes. Yes, I think they make it deliberately vague, right? Like, is it like Susan's going, oh, he doesn't want him wasting his time. He doesn't want him wasting the ship's resources. He wants him to be fresh, but
right.
Yeah,
I think that look that Sheridan gives to himself right there, just before he tells Susan that, is him schooling his reaction so that that's what Susan will think.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I have a question.
Sure.
The Drafa plague, there was a reference made to the Black Death plague.
Oh, Drafa plague, yeah.
And was it? And did I mishear it, or did somebody say that it was the Black Death plague? It was the same plague, or?
No, they just
No.
referenced it's something like what's happening.
Okay.
I think it was kind of they were making a correlation between the
All right.
two.
I thought there was an inference that it was exactly the same as
No. In
the
fact,
Black Death, because that would be interesting, because how could that jump from Earth to 13th century to this other civilization, unless maybe the shadow warriors were planting.
Yeah, and
that's interesting.
So someone posted, no disease in human history is 100% fatal. And JMS says, not correct. The Black Death was fatal to everyone infected by it. It was not as Drafa, 100% contagious, but it was about 90% contagious. The Black Death wiped out 3/4 of the entire European population. And the editor wrote, not quite true. 3/4 of the population in some areas was wiped out. The total toll was closer to 1/4, still pretty devastating. The mortality rate was high, but some people survived and was immune. Thereafter, it also hit Africa and Asia. And he says the only thing this is back to JMS, the only thing that saved areas of Europe was there wasn't as much travel then as today between countries.
At least not from Great Britain area.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't Great Britain then, but you know what I mean, that area.
Yeah.
That island. And I think one of the things that I read about it, and again, I'm not sure, but I think London was pretty decimated by it. I think maybe half the population of London. It was like the most affected area, I think. And I'm glad that they gave that correlation. And there's also Franklin mentioned several things, although they talked more in depth about the Black Plague. He does also mention AIDS and the Spanish flu. And I think that that's interesting to mention, because I feel like that kind of gives people a history lesson, which I love. I mean, the reason I love Timeless, the show, was because every episode gave a history lesson, and it was pretty dead on, the history in each episode. And so to inform people, I mean, a lot of people don't know what happened with the Black Plague, and to inform people about that, to give a little lesson in the middle of an episode was very cool. And I know all the things that he said were 100% true. They did kill cats because they thought, and then in doing that, they made right. And so it correlates to the meerkats isolating themselves and singing Hakuna Matata.
Yes.
Sorry.
So one last thing from Lurker's Guide. This is JMS. One person I spoke to at the CDC, Center for Disease Control, said that hypothetically speaking, the sudden eruption of a disease like this is possible. How likely depends on various circumstances. There are, for instance, regions in the Amazon and South Africa where certain kinds of plant and animal life can be found, and those specific life forms can transfer diseases to human. He says they are highly contagious. The only thing that has, parentheses, so far, close parentheses, prevented a massive outbreak is the fact that the time you generally get out of the remote areas, you're dead. A particularly aggressive disease could perform very much like what is described in this episode. And that was written in the 90s. So very.
There are areas of the rainforests and stuff that we haven't really gotten to.
Yeah.
So I could see where that would happen too.
And I will say that he did say that just to show back how crazy they are, that you will not see this alien again. So all the makeup, all the sets, all the props, they've done away with. And he said that but his point was it had to be a race we knew, or else it wouldn't have the effect. So
right. And we've seen them several times. We saw them way back when they were part of the, what do you call that? The unorganized ambassadors, right? that one of those guys was there. So we've seen them several times in the past, which I thought was cool that they picked a race that we know. One of the, I don't know if you're going to bring it up, but they mentioned Franklin's hitchhiking again.
Yes.
And the fact that he knew a lot about the Markab. He knew how to pronounce the Markab's name in the last episode. He has offered drinks, right?
Yeah.
From them. I mean, I feel like he had a connection to that race in particular, which also adds a layer to it.
Yeah.
Is that something we should be looking for, his hitchhiking?
Yes, I think that is another warm thing. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other final thoughts before we move on to ratings?
I would just say that considering the number of extras they had in prosthetics, they did an amazing job. I thought all of the actors wearing those masks looked realistic. So that was kudos off to the makeup department on this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. I'll start. I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. I'm not snoring statements. Lou?
I will give it also 8 out of 10 Minbari takeouts.
Nice. Karen?
I'm also going to give it an 8 out of 10 pieces of Flarn. And I thought Flarn sounded like a thing that was on Futurama for some reason. The slurm.
Yeah. Good.
Floss with Flarn.
Yes.
Rass and Frass and Flarn.
Yeah. So Karen, do you have our Texas on the Shock email?
I do. I lifted up this time.
Good.
Texas on the Shock says, "Isn't it nice when we get these bright, light, happy, fun episodes?" Ha ha ha. I could see the sarcasm in that comment. That's
yes.
So what happens when you get a plague that's 100 times worse than the Black Death, Spanish flu, AIDS, and COVID? Better question is, how are they going to deal with all those bodies? That's something too. Anyway, a few observations. Sheridan puts the kibosh on Kefler's searching for that thing he saw. Since Sheridan had that talk with Delenn and Ka, she probably has a guess as to what Kefler saw and knows what will happen. Okay, I'm giving a caveat. I did not read this before we talked. I just had it up.
Yes.
So that, I guess that's a wavelength thing between me and Texas on the Shock. He probably has a guess as to what Kefler saw and knows what will happen if he actually finds it. Will Kefler actually give up his search, though? Dun, dun, dun.
Yes.
You might recall Franklin's demonstrated familiarity with the Markab on a number of occasions, offering his father a Markab fruit drink, mentioning he knows a Markab doctor, presumably Lazarin, who was also the ombudsman we saw in the first season, and was the only one who could pronounce the dead Markab's demon eyes. Hello, Texas.
Yes, indeed.
As for the plague itself, is anyone suspicious about it? Very rarely, if ever, does a disease come along that is 100% terminal, that works against them. They perpetuate by not being completely terminal. Otherwise, they close off the avenues of transmission. It makes me suspect this might be deliberate. Oh, Lou. Why would that be? Testing a possible weapon? Or might it have to do with the fact that way back in the long dark, it was the Markab that was drawing attention to a growing darkness? It's a question for the ages. That's all I have for now. This is the Texas on the Shock signing off. Lou, you got one too.
There you go.
Nice. All right, Lou, we did post the new episode and we got a little bit of feedback. I saw actually a pretty healthy amount of postings. You want to share a few?
Sure. This is for the episode 17, Knives. And Simon replies that Jeff from Babylon 5 for the first time podcast is also quoting Rush quite a lot in reference to the show. Oh, wow. Is he Canadian? That's interesting.
No, that's great.
Although it's the Expanse that has a spaceship called Rocinante, same as Cygnus X1. That's right. Also originally Don Quixote's horse, of course. I like that. Not a lot to say about this episode. He mentions that if you watch this before Shadow of Zadoom, Then Sheridan sees the Icarus explode in space because that's what he's always thought happened. Then this inspires him to look through Anna's stuff and what would be the next episode. That's about the only plot-sensitive issue. Otherwise, putting knives earlier means the season ends with a run of 6 very solid JMS episodes in a row instead of 5. All right. And Texas also likes to post besides sending emails. Not really an opera per se, but I think I'll go with Peer Gynt. My parents are both musicians, so I grew up with a lot of classical music. My sister also once soloed "O Divine Redeemer." Did you notice that Sheridan had a hat with the Agamemnon on it?
I did.
Yes, I think we did that. Yeah. I mentioned this on another podcast, and this is probably in reference to the comment we made about serialization versus standalone. They believe that audiences watching it for the first time these days are more prone to getting frustrated with it because they're already expecting a story arc. But Babylon 5 had to lead its audience step by step to introduce them to the concept of an arc and get them comfortable with it. Once that was done, JMS started shifting gears and stepping on the gas. So he then goes on to say that he believes B5 hits a magic spot between the standalone and serial episodes. Much like Avatar: The Last Airbender is another one. It's mostly standalone stories, but when you go back, there's at least one major thread in each of them. The NCU is like that as well. And I think I agree with that quite a bit. Mr. Delenn says, Sheridan's helmet features a flying tiger from the first AVG squadron of the Flying Tigers of World War II. Oh, cool.
And that was the baseball helmet, I'm assuming.
Well, no, his fighter's pilot.
We were talking about what you were wondering. We were discussing what is on the decals on his thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he also says Garibaldi's is mostly a tiger stripe pattern. It was hard to tell. It looked almost like an alien face hugger to me.
Yeah.
And then there's some discussion here about the fight scene that there's a gap there with a sword following Stolendo's left and somewhat behind Urzo. And a few seconds later, Urzo is about to deliver the coup de grace. The sword is now in Lando's hand. I thought he picked it up off the floor, didn't he? But maybe I'm misremembering that scene.
So
baseball.
At least someone else nitpicks stuff like we do, right?
The baseball portions. B5 played softball games with DS9 and later Voyager in the scene where Garibaldi has the B5 jersey on. That's his softball jersey in between seasons. Oh, cool. JMS was given an award by JPL. I think that's the Jupiter Propulsion Lab, but I'm not sure. But one thing they had issues with the baseball scene. They explained there was no way a baseball would work right as shown.
In anti-gravity or whatever? Is maybe, that because it's spinning.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we kept coming back to, we were trying to see when Morden and Ver were having the conversation, and Ver had said he'd wanted to see Morden's head on a spike or whatever. And he says, that's probably why it got past the censors. Morden giving Ver the finger. You guys didn't even see it. I still haven't seen that.
I'll have to go back again.
Yeah, we did look, and I don't remember seeing that. I'm not doubting them. I'm sure it is. Right. I just don't remember. Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's a framing issue. This was done in Pan or 4:3. I wonder if when they put it to letterbox, if maybe parts of the screen got cut out, because I'm not seeing that, but I don't know. Then he also goes on to say that he's watched TKO or Infection 1,000 times before watching DSI, Move Along Home, The Muse, Prophet and Lace, or so many others. Sure, compared to the rest of B5, TKO is not the first one you would show your friends, but it's not that bad.
Okay. I would argue with that. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. When people say that season 2 is so much better than 1, they're probably thinking of the later episodes of season 2 and how it ends because of how it advances the plot. But the setup is necessary. Without setup, there's no payoff. Some people don't like Sinclair. Some people have terrible judgment. What can you do? Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah. And I want to stress that I do not think that either one of you are like, oh, this is a piece of crap because we get standalone episodes. The this is in a way we are doing a book review as we're reading the book. So you can only talk about what you've seen so far. And so when we give that, yes, we're frustrated, but we understand that I want to know more. It's kind of the same thing when you know, you're watching a series and you go, we can't binge everything. And some of them, you're like, oh, like I love Ted Lasso. And so far we've gotten 2 episodes of this new season and I'm ready for a new one already.
Yep.
But I know that's just the way things go.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not like we don't like the standalone episodes. It's just that we prefer to see an arc.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the fact that they're putting little threads throughout, even the standalones, makes me happy.
Yeah,
So,
and based on chatter, I expected this Babylon 5 series to be a series arc episode setup, because everybody says it's like a novel. So I'm expecting that serialization, and it's there a little bit, but it hasn't really kicked in. But we can wait. I mean, Farscape and Fringe had the same thing in their first season, and it didn't really kick in until season 2 as well. So we'll see how that plays out. And I'm expecting at this point it will happen.
Mention Farscape bingo card.
There you go. Have we got a bingo yet?
Yeah, I don't know.
And CPMFF 2112. I'm a huge Russ fan. I figured that with your 2112 in your ID, sir or ma'am. And if he comes back and says, can't really say much about Sheridan carrying an alien because spoilers, we can talk about that later, but by then we'll have bigger issues to talk about. Interesting.
Hey.
Dun, dun, dun.
And then Skyfire 2020, does the Steva song from Fifth Element count as opera? And Karen replied, I count it. That movie is awesome in a very weird way. And I agree with you on both counts.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I love that movie.
And then TMC Grenier says, Rush. What is Rush?
Also, I think we kind of got a payoff between our YouTube comments that we've all been making and this episode, where they're saying the Vorlons are responsible for everything. The guy who made the stupid joke at the end, he says, it's the Vorlons. And we've been saying that, so it's cool to get that kind of gratification from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's been great. Good. All right. If someone wants to leave us a message or feedback, how can they, Lou?
Well, we have an email address, right?
Yes, we do. I was going to give you tell them about Lou's review.
Yeah, I know you were, but I thought.
Yeah, jklb5podcast@gmail.com.
That's right. Or
right now,
yep.
Texas on the Shock is the only one that's been emailing us,
okay.
and
They
need more. They need company.
Okay. Or you can just leave a comment on YouTube at Lou's Reviews, where the Babylon 5 playlist can be found, along with the other playlists there, our Stephen King podcast, my writer's interview podcast, or our JKLM media podcast, where we do one-offs or short series on books, movies, TV series that we really enjoyed, like to share with everybody else. And you can find me on Twitter at Lou W. Sitzmo or S King Podcast.
All right. And Karen?
I'm at Elveria on the Twitter machine. There's a link in my bio to my blog, at which you could find all my other links.
And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW. Would love to get some feedback and let us know what you're thinking. Next week, Divided Loyalties, the return of a cast member. And so looking forward to discussing that. And I don't know if you not, at the very end of this episode, there is an alien that walks by like they are Dream from the Sandman. It is just a clip, and he said, JMS said, no, that was just a World War II mask, but it damn sure looks like Dream. So
okay.
Yeah. All right. Listeners, thank you so much. Come back to us next week. But for now, stay safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And see.